legally speaking, the Convention on the Rights of the Child of the United Nations, which was adopted in 1989, so now we are celebrating 30 years of the CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, is very, very clear on this issue. It says children should in principle never be behind bars. It should only be a measure of last resort, and that means that you always have to first see what are alternatives, non-custodial measures. So for instance, rather than putting them somewhere in police jails and in prisons, you should divert them out of the criminal justice system to the child welfare system. It's much better because there they can deal with difficult kids, much better than in a prison. Or rather than putting them in big institutions, children have a right to live with their families. Many children in this kind of institutions actually do have parents, but parents are not able to cope with them. They are difficult, they have antisocial behavior, they might run away from home, but then the state has an obligation to support those families so that they can better cope with their difficult children. If you don't have parents, or if there's really a lot of violence and dysfunctional family, it might be necessary that you are taken away from your parents. But then you should not be put in a big institution. You should be put into a foster family or in another environment where you feel it's like a family, where you also experience love, and you are not only one number in a huge institution, where in the evening they just tell you, you have to go to bed, and if you are not in bed in time, then there's a disciplinary punishment. Children want to be brought to bed by parents or others who love them, and perhaps give them a kiss before they go to sleep and say, sleep well. That's a totally different way, and that is what children actually need. So that's what the law says, but they say sometimes a measure of last resort. Sometimes it might be necessary. There might be children who have committed the most horrible crimes. They're very dangerous, so there might be no alternative than to put them behind bars. But these are very, very few exceptional cases. And then the Convention says, but in those exceptional cases, it should only be for the shortest appropriate period of time. That means a few days, perhaps a few weeks, but not years. And I have seen children that spent years behind bars in all kinds of institutions, psychiatric hospitals and in prisons. Children are defined by the Convention on the Rights of the Child as every human being up to the age of 18. So not only the small children, but also adolescents, the youth. They all have special needs and should be treated differently than adults. What does deprivation of liberty actually mean? If I lock the doors in this room here and I lock you in, then you are deprived of liberty, because you cannot leave at your own free will. And the right to personal liberty is one of the most important rights. Think back when you were yourself a child, how much energy you had. If somebody, your parents or your school teachers, put you somewhere in a karzer or however you call this kind of rooms where you have been locked in. I hope it didn't happen to you, but it happened to me, for instance. It's terrible, because the right to personal liberty means you want to run around, you want to be free. Then you realize what it means not to be free. I've been speaking with so many prisoners who were for a long time in a small cell below the ground. They didn't see the sun. They had no light, no natural light. It's terrible. You deprive them of the most essential things that you need for living a healthy life. And imagine children. I've spoken with so many children who at a very early age, with 2-3 years, they were put into an orphanage because either the parents died or they couldn't cope with the children. And then you were brought from one institution to the other because you had a kind of antisocial behavior. At the end you were perhaps committing a small crime, stealing something, etc. So you got in conflict with the law, you were put by the police into police jail, and finally you ended up in prison. I've seen girls and boys who spent most of their youth somewhere behind bars. You destroy their life, you destroy their childhood. This is the formative time of your life. That's where you should develop your talents, your skills, in order then to become an adult that is functioning well in a democratic society. So those children are traumatized for the rest of their life. I also have seen some who really liberated themselves from this terrible past, but most of those children actually end up somewhere also as adults in prisons and cannot cope with the challenges of life outside of prison.